Hi, everybody. I'm Austin Allison, editor of Campaign Middle East, and I'm joined today by Dheeraj Gupta, who's the CTO at mFilterIt, and by Haris Khan, who is the head of customer acquisition for the super app Kareem. Now, I'm wondering what a super app is, so I'm quickly going to go straight to you, Haris, and ask, what is a super app? What is Kareem?
Sure. Hi, Austin. Hi, Gupta. Yes, so maybe I think most of the people who have been living in GCC really understand this brand because I think Kareem has like a very strong brand equity here. But recently, Kareem has actually being evolved into a super app, as you mentioned that. And when we say super app, it's basically consolidating all the different services that Kareem have into one app. And that includes Kareem Pay, bikes, but that is only limited to Dubai, then Ride Hail, which was the primary service that we have. And then we have food, restaurant, and delivery services all merged into one app. So this is basically, you can say, is the version 1 of the super app. But in near future, you will also see some regional and local companies and apps will also be hosted on the Kareem super app platform. So basically, but if I just try to summarize that Kareem being a ride-hail company was in the past, but now it's pivoting towards a platform. And when we say platform, it has like all of the services that can be accumulated into that one platform. Yeah,
well, so that puts you in a really good position then to ask to answer my next question, which is going to be about ad fraud, because that's what we're here to talk about today. And so for basically, how has the last year, obviously COVID has affected a lot of things, but how has it affected ad fraud on your app and your the various things that you do?
Yeah, so I think ad fraud is something that this region is basically getting awareness about, and different companies are trying to cater this at a different level, and specifically in the context of COVID, what I would say that it actually gives us, if I'll be very honest, give us some time to actually review everything and understand everything, because we understand that there is always a fraud in this ecosystem, but what is the best solution to cater that is something that we invested time on. And that is, I would say, is something that we are going forward with to just have some state-of-the-art platform which can actually help us understand this. And I think this is something that has happened during the COVID timeframe.
What sort of ad fraud were you seeing? What sort of things were you worried? Have you been worried about?
Yeah, I think there has been like a different type of fraud. So, for example, I mean, there's some companies who started off with only install campaigns, but then they realized there's like a lot of install fraud coming up. Then they moved into like the cost per order model.
I'm going to just sort of clarify there. That's when you're trying to get people to install your app, and you're getting fake installs.
Yes, okay. Exactly. So that's the fake install. If I'll be more explicit, yes, that's the fake install. But yeah, I mean, the advertiser that you work with, it's even when you're dealing with those guys, you're just dealing with the tip of iceberg, and even they guys don't have like a complete control of all the inventories where your actually ad will be going live with, specifically in the context of ad networks. So with this said, like the different type of frauds that I've seen happening in this region commonly is basically the install fraud. That if you are paying for the install, then I mean there's a considerable portion of the install which are not legit, they're fake installs. There's no real user behind that install. Then there's like an install click spamming is another thing. Then the click injection is another thing. But again, one of the very interesting fraud that I think I should talk about is basically the attribution fraud. And that I think is like relatively an advanced version. Yeah. So it's basically just imagine that you saw a Kareem ad on Facebook, and you downloaded the app from Facebook, but through some click spamming or click injection, some of the advertisers can attribute that install towards themselves instead of Facebook, and then they will actually claim all the revenues and all the activities that user has done. So once a user is attributed to any of the network, either it's Facebook or any ad network, then the user will probably stay there unless and until that is re-attributed. So with this said, attribution fraud is something that I think is pretty much happening, and this region needs a severe counter to manage that attribution fraud, I would say.
Brilliant. I'm going to go over to Dheeraj. And you've got you're the CTO of mFilterIt. First of all, can you tell me in one sentence what is mFilterIt?
mFilterIt is a performance marketing fraud detection tool where we focus on campaigns where your interest is not just reach and word of mouth, but your interest is installs, events, visits, leads, sales, for example. And that's what mFilterIt helps in as performance campaign validator or protector for all advertisers.
Brilliant. So that means that you're in a great position to tell me whether Hadis's experience is likely to be unique to Kareem, unique to Dubai, unique to the Middle East, or is this pretty much the way? Are these the themes that you're seeing in ad fraud around the world?
No, I think it's. I think Hadis has put it very well. I think it's not just limited to Dubai and Middle East. It's actually spread all over the world. Simply put, when advertisers are putting in more layers of performance, right? When earlier they said, okay, you give me a click, I'll pay for a click. Then they said, okay, give me an install, I'll pay for an install. Then they said, okay, give me an event, I'll pay for an event. Fraudsters have kept up to the level with them. It's a cat and mouse game. So when advertisers have gone up the performance funnel, fraudsters have also done that. And different types of frauds, for example, the one which Hadis talked about, click injection, click spamming, is now fairly popular. And that actually has a very counterintuitive impact, which advertisers may not be aware about. Normal logic says that if you don't get performance, if you don't get sales, then you obviously the traffic is bad, right? Bad performance means bad traffic. But with attribution fraud, as Hadis explained, you will actually get amazing performance, because people who are from social media, from organic traffic, if those have got hijacked to inorganic traffic, the performance of those users is going to be amazing, as at par with organic. So it's counterintuitive for an advertiser to look like that if I'm getting very good performance, that is also fraud. And that's something which is not hardwired for a lot of advertisers. I mean, we've all, grown up trying to understand bot fraud, click farming, understand fake clicks, which don't generate any performance. But here is a case where you can actually get brilliant performance, but you're still dealing with fraud. So it's not a regional issue. It's not a Kareem issue for sure. It's something widespread, and that's what advertisers need to be careful about.
So, what sort of precautions can advertisers take to avoid this? It sounds like the first step would be simply changing their mindset. Is that the case, or?
Oh, absolutely. Well begun is half done, right? So at least accepting or at least going against the assumption that if I'm paying on performance, I'm covered. I think that's the first step for any advertiser, to accept that there is a possibility of fraud. Let me evaluate, right? When you evaluate, then you're opening yourself up to, all sorts of possibilities, and you can actually come out with whether you're facing something like that or not. Some quick things which we believe advertisers should obviously do. Definitely do background checks on your publishers, ad networks, wherever you're working with. But B, look at very simple things like how many times is the same IP address repeating? How many times is the same traffic coming in again and again? What is the conversion ratio of traffic? Are you seeing extremely low conversion rates, 0.01% click to conversion ratios, or are you seeing healthier conversion rates? Think like a publisher. Do you think a network would run your campaign at a loss? So you have normally a regional CPC rate, right? So suppose you assume that
CPC
this is
cost per click.
Cost per click rate in the market. If some publisher is running at cost which is not making sense at all, and you as a publisher would never run that, then just put yourself in the shoes and say that why is the publisher running this? And most likely the answer would be fraud. So even basic simple checks, by where you look at your own tracking systems, look at their logs and just go through them, you'll actually see a lot of patterns which just don't make sense. I think that's the starting point of any advertiser to look at. Just get a control of your own data and analyze it. That's going to speak volumes of your and maybe the first step in fraud detection for you.
Okay, that's very handy. But I'm going to go to Hadis, who is, that's coming from you as the fraud expert. But Hadis, have you tried doing this, and does it work? Is it as simple as that? Can you simply look at your logs and see these and see odd things, or? how practical is that advice?
I think what Dheeraj is referring is basically a big data. I mean, if we talk about specifically in the context of app, and if it's like a huge data which is basically flowing into our data warehouse, we can run. But again, I think this is not very straightforward being an advertiser, because I've been like personally working with all these platforms and in looking into the ad fraud for the last at least 4 to 5 years. It's not very straightforward, I would say, because fraudsters are constantly evolving. If you catch on some fraud, for example, then they will actually come up with another one, and you really need some subject matter expert to catch this. I mean, even if you talk about mobile marketing platforms, they comes up with a very basic fraud prevention tools, but they are again not the expert in fraud. They're basically primarily an attribution platform. So you really need an expert who can actually really understand it. But at a very basic level, you can probably understand your data. You can see like the click time, then you can probably see the app open time, and you can see the difference. I mean, if it's like very high in terms of the normal user pattern, then of course there's something that you can catch also. But again, it won't be very straightforward. You really need something which can actually help you achieve this in a consistent manner. Because and instead of investing a lot of time into this and probably like having a resource who will look into that, maybe you can just outsource it to a company or maybe a platform or tool that can help you. Because once you catch the fraud, you have to actually deal with all the advertisers that you are working with. So you have to justify why this is fraud. And if you are like just spending a lot of time on from your side, from your team, on just dealing with all these networks and managing them, then it won't even make business sense. So the straightforward answer, what I would say, is basically is a specialized tool that can actually help you achieve this.
What do you do once you've established ad fraud?
Yeah, so basically once we figure out that this is basically the ad fraud that we are getting from one of the partners, then we really have to, and they guys also ask, and they understand the fact that there is definitely a fraud. I mean, there's no such thing as complete 100% fraud-free traffic. So once we establish that this is basically, for example, if there are 100 clicks, out of those 100 clicks, how many of them are fraud? Out of those, from the installs that we generated, the events that we generated, then we actually have to justify them. Okay, so if you are claiming this much payout and we think that this is the payout because the remaining what you are claiming is fraud, and here are the reasons for fraud. And the reasons for fraud actually can be like, it can be like maybe duplicate install, low time to event, and it can be, click spamming, click injection, attribution fraud, and there can be like a whole list of, fraud that Dheeraj will actually have more context on. But again, with the properly deployed tool, you can actually justify the ad networks that this is the fraud, and here are the reasons why it's classified as fraud.
So do you see yourself having conversations with ad networks in 2021? That's what we're looking at.
Yeah, again, I mean the arbitrage behind working with ad networks. I mean, if you just talk to the leadership team, for example, within my organization, they can say, why do we really have to go with ad networks to start with? I mean, you have like all the other platforms like Facebook, Google, Twitter, Instagram. I mean, why don't you just go with that? But again, the reason that we really wanted to keep up that in the ecosystem is because of the lowest cost at the inventory level. Because the inventory that we're buying from ad networks is really relatively lower in comparison to Facebook and Google's and Twitter. So that is basically, it makes sense. But again, that comes up with the thing that it has fraud. So again, it helps you with the normalizing your overall budgets and maximizing the revenues. It has scale. If you talk about ad networks, it has scale, it has volume, but again, it comes up with a huge problem, which is fraud. So yeah, I think going forward, we will be actually, we will be making sure to keep ad networks in the ecosystem, but with the proper fraud tool in place.
Dheeraj, is that again? I keep coming back to you saying, is that typical? Is it the case that the less you pay, the more fraud you get? Is that a fair?
No, not really. In fact, I want to debunk that theory as well. A lot of advertisers have assumed, or higher management have assumed, that platforms like Google, Facebook, Instagram, etc., don't have fraud. That's actually not the case. If you search online for a lot of cases, Google, Instagram, Facebook have been caught asking advertisers to pay for fraud. They knew it was bot traffic. Google had a very classic case on YouTube a couple of years ago. They identified bots on YouTube. but they still build the advertisers for that, right? And they actually, after a year they were caught, they actually had to refund money back to advertisers, and they had to bring in Nielsen to kind of do an audit for them and stuff like that. So in fact, in my opinion, obviously, a lot of advertisers feel programmatic is a very clean traffic, because they feel that it is transparent, you know exactly where it is running. Unfortunately, that's where, what you see is, you're being led to believe that that's the case, but that's not the situation. Programmatic has amongst one of the highest levels of fraud. The transparency which it brings is actually fake. It's actually based on honor. I can actually say that I'm running on programmatic on, say, a premium website like CNN or Campaign Media, for example, and I might have.
Yes.
And I might have no relationship with CNN or with you or so on. And advertisers would say that, oh, hey, my ad ran on Campaign Media, must be good. These guys are great. But actually, that's all which the logs are saying, but that's not the truth. So I would want to debunk that theory that it's only a affiliate or an ad network issue. Wherever there is an interest of someone, as a publisher, for example, a GDN brings in third-party publishers, Facebook Audience Network brings in third-party publishers, that's when fraud creeps in, because now the publishers have an incentive to do the fraud. And the moment they do that, that's when advertisers will go take a hit.
I've got time to just ask you quickly, what we've looked at sort of some of the issues that are ongoing now. I'd like to just ask you very quickly, what fraud threats can you see emerging in 2021? Maybe ones that you're not tackling yet, but ones that you fear will be coming up then. Is there? This is definitely sort of crystal ball stuff, but I'm thinking if we have the same conversation next year, what sort of new threats do you think will be there? And Dhiraj, I'll definitely come to you for this one.
So I think the biggest issue which 2021 is bringing for advertisers, especially for the Middle East region, is the iOS 14, the IDFA device ID issue.
IDFA?
IDFA is the iOS device identifier, which
Right.
is used for basically
you can track people across yeah. Apple's devices.
In the interest of privacy, Apple is planning to restrict that, and it's planned to be rolled out sometime beginning 2021. What it's going to, while it's great from a privacy perspective and no arguments there at all, from an ad fraud perspective, that's actually going to increase ad fraud to a whole new level, because now even fraudsters can hide behind the privacy, and it will allow normal checks, device ID based checks, moot now because device ID is not even available. It's actually going to increase ad fraud tremendously. And that, I think, is going to be the biggest change which is coming in, especially for the Middle East region, where iOS devices have a very high percentage, and which means Android is a much lower percentage here, which means that that's something to look out on. So it's, of course, a tracking nightmare what IDFA is going to bring in, but it's actually an ad fraud nightmare as well. So that's one prediction I have for 2021, where ad fraud is actually going to increase and become a bigger issue in Middle East. Second, what we are seeing as which is happening more and more is on brand safety in performance. What's happening is, typically advertisers have kept brand safety and ad fraud to be two separate buckets, but brand safety is actually now becoming, ad fraud and brand safety is now becoming two sides of the same coin. We are seeing fraudsters do brand unsafe things simply so that they can clickbait. I'm sorry?
Such as? What would be a brand unsafe thing be?
So for example, very simply, suppose I start peddling fake news, right? I start talking about salacious content, which actually generates suddenly a burst of traffic. It generates a lot of views, but it's all junk, copied, pirated content, or just fake news. It's definitely going to be a brand safety issue, but it's actually being done to do fraud, in the sense that it's being done to clickbait and bring customers onto the website to generate visits, clicks, and so on. In fact, we've seen an increase in amount of ads which are promising lotteries, iPhones. A lot of ads now saying, do this, click here and win a free iPhone. No one is winning a free iPhone, unfortunately, but that click is actually resulting in things like cookie stuffing, click spamming, which on a performance level will actually result in sales to be stolen from organic traffic. So, so brand safety and ad fraud are very quickly merging, colliding. Advertisers need to probably think about their brand safety and ad fraud being separate tools and merge them into one. That I think is going to be another shift for 2021.
Excellent. Haris, how are you preparing for the balance between privacy, ad fraud, and brand safety in 2021?
Yeah, so this has been like a point of discussion internally for the last 1.5 months since Apple announced this iOS 14. So we have been like in contact with the mobile marketing platform that we use. I mean, they guys offer some preliminary solutions that we need to deploy, but I'm not really sure. I mean, how effective they could be. But one of the things that they claim that they do have a solution theoretically. It's all about just bringing it to the live world once they start rolling out this iOS 14 privacy thing, as Dheeraj mentioned, starting next year. So again, I think as a preparation for next year, because this COVID thing this year, 2020, was not very great in terms of going into advertising and for Kareem, because it's primarily a right hill was before, but what we have noticed that the right hill has gone down because of obvious reason that everything is under lockdown. But on the same side, we also see that food and delivery business has really picked up. Now the focus is basically at a super app level for 2021, and we are really looking for some great scale in coming year, and to make sure that we prepare for that, we are already like in talks with some of the tools to bring them on board, and that is basically the preparation that we have. Again, with all the knowledge that we have for fraud, at least from the advertiser side, I'm quite sure there's like definitely new things which the subject matter experts can definitely understand in a much better context. And we do have that comfort zone that once we scale up in all the 360-degree market approach, we will be having that peace of mind that at least whatever we are paying is paying for the legit traffic and not the fake traffic. So that is something which we are definitely doing in a very short time span in coming days. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. So it seems to me that the sort of one of the key takeaways there is sort of stay vigilant and keep watching the data. Thank you very much for your insights on ad fraud and what we need to look out for in 2021. I've been Austin Allison. I've been joined by Haris Khan, Head of Customer Acquisition for Kareem, and by Dheeraj Gupta, CTO at mFilterIt. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.